One of the world's top AI scientists just quit Meta AI. We need to dive into this story. This is Yann LeCun. This is the guy that literally built the foundations of modern AI before it was cool. He invented convolutional neural networks, the tech behind computer vision, facial recognition, self-driving cars. He pioneered deep learning back when academia laughed at it. He and Geoffrey Hinton kept training neural nets whilst everyone else gave up. He also created LeNet in 1990s, which read handwritten digits, which is basically the ancestor of every modern vision model. This is the guy who made the trends that everyone else is chasing now. And this is the guy who just quit Meta's AI lab. So the story hasn't gained as much traction as I thought it would, because this is a really important story that will change the future of AI in a way that I couldn't have foreseen. You see, the Turing Award is basically the Nobel Prize of computer science. It's the highest honor in computing, and it's awarded to people whose work fundamentally changed computing. So what Nobel Prize is to physics, the Turing Award is to computer science. And this guy that was working at Meta, he just quit. So, like I said, you can see the article that says Meta's chief AI scientist Yann LeCun plans to exit and launch his own startup. And this is pretty bearish for Meta because Meta have not had the best reputation in AI. They've been slow to catch up. They've been pedaling on the back foot for quite some time now. And they basically had their best gun, their one best shot at achieving human level intelligence. In my opinion, from someone who's not chasing hype, not chasing trends, focused on the next generation of human level intelligence, just leave. This is pretty bad. So let's dive into the article a bit, because it talks about Zuckerberg has pivoted away from the longer term research work of Meta's fundamental AI research lab, which LeCun has headed since 2013, to focus more rapidly on rolling out AI models and AI products after deciding that Meta has fallen behind the competition. Here, they're basically talking about the fact that Meta's fundamental AI research lab, this is the lab that Yann LeCun has been the head of. And unfortunately, they were a little bit behind on LLMs, and all of a sudden, Meta is scrambling to sort of get things going again. And in doing so, they've kind of focused on LLMs and not fair, which is what Yann LeCun was a part of. So why would this guy leave Meta? Well, it's pretty crazy because overall, one of the key decisions I think that there are actually two decisions. So let me just get these 2 points in. Number one is the fact that Yann LeCun, he's reporting to Alexander Wang. And because for someone like LeCun, it's a status and authority downgrade. Yann LeCun is a Turing Award winner. He's literally the highest honor in computer science. And he's one of the three godfathers of deep learning. And he's been the chief scientist at AI at Meta and a peer to Mark Zuckerberg and a top level research leader. Now, Alexander Wang, this new guy, is brilliant, young and powerful and data labeling, but he's not a researcher, nor a Turing Award, nor a, Turing Award caliber scientist, and he's not Yann LeCun's academic equal. So when you have to understand that Yann LeCun was supposed to be reporting to Alexander Wang, from Yann LeCun's perspective, it feels like a world-class professor being told to report to a student who got rich first. Not disrespect, but misaligned hierarchy. And Yann LeCun is a guy who values scientific autonomy, not corporate hierarchy. He's older, more established, more credentialed, and has shaped the field for 30 years. And being placed under someone younger and less academically accomplished can feel like, well, you're not leading the field anymore. Now remember, this is a guy also, and this brings me on to my second point, is that, other than reporting to someone who he feels is not his academic equal, which is completely fair, Yann LeCun is also a skeptic of LLMs. Right here it says Yann LeCun is a skeptic of large language models, which are the path to superintelligence. Well, he's skeptical of them as the path to superintelligence. But we have to understand where things went wrong in Meta's lab, because it's not just, one-time thing. This is not just, okay, the guy decided to leave. This was a long-term decision, I think, after Meta's continual deterioration of not only products, but sheer decisions. One of the key things that, was regarded as a failure was the Llama 4 release. Llama 4 was widely regarded as a failed release for several significant reasons, including underwhelming performance, ethical controversies, and allegations of misleading benchmarks and practices compared to top competitors like GPT-4o and DeepSeek R1. Now, most of you guys, you might even not remember what the Llama models are because it's been so forgotten that we had even, Llama 1, Llama 2, and Llama 3, which were decent models at the time, but somehow Llama 4 just completely got screwed over. And essentially what happened is the lab just fell behind DeepSeek, and DeepSeek were essentially months ahead of them, and they just couldn't figure out how to catch up. Llama 4 literally demonstrated poor logical reasoning ability, inconsistent coding performance, especially on industry benchmarks like the Ada Polyglot Coding Assessment, where it only scored 16% rendering it unreliable for professional deployment compared to other models specifically engineered for reasoning. And it was pretty crazy. The model struggled with long form writing quality, produced verbose, less engaging outputs, falling behind alternative models. And you have to understand that this is meant to be like, this was like ChatGPT 4.5 or GPT-5 having a complete blundered release and other companies going ahead. Now, you remember, like, this is Meta. So Meta is going to be looking at the AI team thinking, okay, we have an AI team. They made Llama 4. What on earth happened to Llama 4? And you might be thinking, how does this relate to Yann LeCun? Well, Llama 4's release was so bad that so many people were literally saying that, I'm going to resign from Meta. The VP of Meta resigned. There were individuals at Meta that resigned. And it got so bad that people were like, wait a minute, Yann LeCun, the GOAT of AI, what happened to Llama 4? Well, he literally had to come out and say, guys, I did not work on Llama 4 or Llama the models because I see what you guys are saying. And guys, I had no contribution to it.
I deserve no credit whatsoever for Llama 3. Maybe a little bit of credit for, making sure our models are open source, but technical, technical contributions, are from a very large collection of people and have very, very small.
So we can see here as well that Yann LeCun talks about, I have not been involved in any Llama except, indirectly in Llama 1 and pushing for the open source of Llama 2. And since early 2023 until recently, Llama 2, 3, and 4 have been in the hands of those Gen AI organizations. And now it's in the hands of a new lab called TBD Lab. I work at FAIR, the fundamental AI research organization, and I work on the next generation of AI systems beyond LLMs. Now, remember, this wasn't just, someone saying that, they want to just distance themselves from the thing. There were tons and tons of people who literally took out the fact that they worked on Llama 4 when they were applying for different jobs because it was so bad that it was going to damage their reputation. Llama 4 was a massive blunder. And this is bad. When you have a frontier company that spends millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars on AI researchers, and they can't, get a foundation model together that competes with the top models, and you have China doing models that are beating GPT-5, you've got Qwen, Kimi, DeepSeek. This is a really bad look for the lab. And then you have, top people resigning. Then you have people saying, look, I wasn't even involved with this. It's pretty crazy. But now we need to get onto the second thing that sort of makes Yann LeCun not even want to work at Meta anymore, because I think this has been the biggest reason and probably the final nail in the coffin, probably like 80% of the reason why he doesn't want to. In the article, it talks about the fact that Yann LeCun has argued that LLMs that Zuckerberg has put at the center of his strategy are useful, but will never be able to reason and plan like humans. And this is at odds with Zuckerberg's vision. So if you aren't familiar with this, LLMs are interesting, and there is a constant debate about whether or not they will lead to AGI. Some people believe they will, some people believe that they won't. And Yann LeCun is one of the strongest, vocal minorities in saying that, look, LLMs are not going to lead you to AGI. They are essentially somewhat of a waste of time because they are completely architecturally wrong in terms of how humans think. And if you compare it to how humans think, it's just completely different. In this video, he talks about the AI bubble and not actually the stock bubble. It talks about the fact that there is an LLM bubble and the fact that LLMs are an off-ramp towards AGI, and most people are confused.
In which there is a bubble, and it's the idea somehow that the current paradigm of LLM will be pushed to the point of having human-level intelligence, which I personally don't believe in, and you don't either. We need kind of a few breakthroughs before we get to machines that really have the kind of intelligence we observe, not just in humans, but also animals. We don't have robots that are nearly as smart as a cat, right? And so we're missing something big still, which is why AI progress is not just a question of more infrastructure, more data, more investment, and more development of the current paradigm. It's actually a scientific question of how do we make progress towards the next generation of AI systems.
Now, he also quoted this video where he talks about LLMs are an off-ramp to the path to AGI, and you have to understand, this was in June of 2024. This is quoting Francis Soleil. This is the guy who created the AGI benchmark, a notoriously difficult benchmark for current LLMs. Most LLMs, even on the recent benchmark, score around, I think, 30 to 20%. And that benchmark is basically really involved with human reasoning, and it really just focuses on how the models can try to emulate human reasoning, and it just, sort of exposes their vulnerable areas. so that when you're developing the next set of models, you're able to really hone down and sort of get human level reasoning. Now, this guy was basically saying that, look, LLMs are clearly, not going to lead to AGI, and LLMs are an off-ramp, and OpenAI, putting so much focus on LLMs is kind of like set up the AI industry to fail, because everyone's looking in one direction and nobody's looking on the directions that actually matter. And this is what Yann LeCun was quoting.
That's actually really sad that frontier research is no longer being published. If you look back, 4 years ago, well, everything was just openly shared. Like all the state-of-the-art results were published, and this is no longer the case. And it's very much, OpenAI single-handedly changed the game. And I think OpenAI basically set back progress towards AGI by quite a few years, probably like 5 to 10 years, for two reasons. And one is that, well, they caused this complete closing down of research, frontier research publishing, but also they trigger this initial burst of hype around LLMs. And now LLMs have sucked the oxygen out of the room. Like everyone is just doing LLMs. And I see LLMs as more of an off-ramp on the path to AGI, actually.
Now, Yann LeCun has been quoted saying that what you need to do is you need to abandon generative models. Right now, generative AI is super popular, but in this presentation, he was giving a talk and he says, abandon generative models in favor of joint embedding architectures, abandon probabilistic models in favor of energy-based models, and abandon contrastive methods in favor of regularized models, and abandon reinforcement learning in favor of predictive model control. I'm going to explain this all in just a moment, but you can see here in big, bold, red letters, he said, if you are interested in human level AI, don't work on LLMs. And I remember when I made a video on this, it actually went pretty viral because this is like a big, not taboo, but it was just something that was so against what the general herd was thinking that most people decided to pay attention.
Recommendations: abandon generative models. The most popular method today that everybody is working on. Stop working on this. You work on JEPAs. Those are not generative models. They predict in representation space. Abandon probabilistic models because it's intractable. Use energy-based models. Mike and I have had like a 20-year contentious discussion about this. Abandon contrastive methods in favor of those regularized methods. Abandon reinforcement learning. But that I've been saying for a long time. We know it's inefficient. You have to use reinforcement learning really as a last resort when your model is inaccurate or your cost function is inaccurate. But if you are interested in human level AI, just don't work on LLM. There's no point. I mean, in fact, if you are in academia, don't work on LLM because you're in competition with like hundreds of people with tens of thousands of GPUs. Like, there's nothing you can bring to the table. Do something else.
And one of the things you might be asking, okay, if Yann LeCun is abandoning LLMs and he's not working on it, what is he actually going to be working on? Well, this is what he's working on. It's called V-JEPA. And it's kind of different to, current LLMs. They basically, understand, predict, and plan exactly how humans do. It's inspired by how humans reason. It's really different. So I'm going to show you guys this video because I think it's important to understand what people are actually building. And I think his startup is probably going to be valued at a few $1 billion and, as soon as they manage to raise funding rounds, because it actually makes sense. And I'm going to dive into that in a moment. But take a look, because V-JEPA 2 was pretty good in terms of what it set out to achieve.
In a world of AI agents, we need models that help them to learn, reason, and plan as efficiently as humans do. V-JEPA 2, a foundation world model for advanced machine intelligence. Inspired by the mental models of humans and animals, world models represent reality and predict how it evolves over time. With a world model, an AI system can efficiently reason, predict, and plan to achieve a goal. V-JEPA 2 is a world model trained through self-supervised learning from more than 1 million hours of video. V-JEPA 2 is a joint embedding predictive architecture, JEPA. The model has two main components: an encoder, which takes in raw video and outputs embeddings that capture semantically useful content about the state of the observed world, and a predictor, which takes in a video embedding and additional context about what to predict and outputs predicted embeddings. Unlike generative models that predict pixels, V-JEPA 2 makes predictions in a learned embedding space, making it far more efficient. V-JEPA 2 demonstrates state-of-the-art capabilities critical for real-world agents: understanding complex motion and temporal dynamics, and predicting actions from contextual cues. Building on the ability to make predictions, a world model is useful for planning sequences of actions that achieve a given goal. While most current AI requires specialized training for specific tasks, V-JEPA's self-supervised approach enables exceptional performance across tasks and domains, acquiring new abilities with just a few examples. We can deploy our model on a robotic arm in a new environment, solve object manipulation tasks such as reaching, grasping, and picking and placing objects without extensive robot data or task-specific training. By releasing the model, we aim to build a community that accelerates progress towards AI assistants and robots that can understand and operate efficiently and safely in the real world.
And we can also see this clip where he basically says that, look, most people that are running these AI labs are completely hyped up. They're saying you're going to have a country of geniuses in a data center, but he actually believed that this is complete BS. It's not going to happen. And his reasoning is honestly fair.
Absolutely no way. And whatever you can hear from some of my more adventurous colleagues, it's not going to happen within the next 2 years. There's absolutely no way in hell to, pardon my French, the idea that we're going to have, a country of genius in the data center, that's complete BS, right? There's absolutely no way. What we're going to have maybe is systems that are trained on sufficiently large amounts of data that any question that any reasonable person may ask will find an answer through those systems. And it would feel like you have, a PhD sitting next to you, but it's not a PhD you have next to you. It's, a system with a gigantic memory and retrieval ability.
Now, I asked myself this question. When I was doing this video, I was like, okay, so Yann LeCun basically says that, look, LLMs are just generative models. They're trained to predict the next word. How can they produce, things like genuinely new mathematics? On screen right now, you can see Alpha Evolve, a Gemini-powered coding agent designed for advanced algorithms. And, generating proofs, conjectures, or algorithms that no human explicitly wrote is pretty difficult, but there have been times that math has been able to do it. So you have to understand that LLMs, what they actually learn is actually deeper than next word prediction. Although they're trained to predict the next word, in practice, that training objective forces them to learn a latent structure of the world, because language encodes information about the world. For example, when an LLM predicts the next word in a circle circumference is 2 pi, it must internally represent the concept of circles and multiplicative relationships. Over trillions of examples, it effectively reconstructs huge chunks of human reasoning patterns, logic, and even math just from text compression. So even though it's generative, it has built a semantic model of how ideas relate, and that latent model can sometimes generalize beyond what it's seen. Now, if we go back to the Alpha Evolve, new math isn't magic, it's emergent generalization. So when people say, Google's AI like DeepMind's or Alpha Tensor or Alpha Geometry discovered new maths, what's actually happening is that they're searching within the learned structure of mathematical relationships. And, they're able to recombine, existing concepts in novel and valid ways, which is something that mathematicians also do. Now, this doesn't refute Yann LeCun entirely, because LeCun's critique isn't that LLMs can't do anything creative or impressive. They clearly can. It's that their understanding is undergrounded and shallow relative to what's needed for general intelligence. Even when they discover new math, they're operating in the abstract space of symbols. They're not interacting with physical reality. They can't test hypotheses in the real world or form causal world models, which is how forces, physics, and perception connect. Their breakthroughs come from brute force recombination and not purposeful exploration driven by curiosity or goals. In other words, their creativity is incidental, not intentional. Now, you might be wondering, are Meta screwed because this isn't good? Losing someone like this is really not good when you think about the long term. I mean, of course, short term, you can think LLMs products and stuff are still going to be fine. But, Zuckerberg has spent, billions bringing in new leaders. He's, on high salaries, millions and millions of dollars. And Meta laid off about 600 people from its AI research unit in a bit to cut costs, eliminate bureaucracy, and release products more quickly. So you have to understand that Meta's kind of going in this strange direction. We also can see that, in terms of the intelligence, you can see where Llama 4 Maverick is. It's very firmly at the back position there on the artificial intelligence area. And you think, okay, is Meta still going to head in the right direction? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what kind of products they're building, and I'm pretty sure most people aren't either. This was the latest thing that I saw on Facebook. It was like Russian girl, stepmom, waifus. I mean, this isn't the kind of products that you really want to be rolling out to a bunch of people that you're trying to get to use your product millions and millions of times. Who knows? Maybe these kind of bots are going to be super popular, but I mean, it's a really confusing time for Meta. They've had a botched Llama 4 release, now one of their top scientists leaving. And on top of that, they are struggling to even make the correct products. I think that Yann LeCun is probably going to start his own AI lab. They're probably going to be very, very successful, raise billions of dollars, and eventually Mark Zuckerberg might even have to buy that lab back in order to maintain competitiveness with the AI race.